This week, the nominees for the Oscars were announced, and the film Everything, Everywhere at Once received the most nominations, 11 in total. Apparently, it's an absurdist comedy, and the plot centers on a Chinese-American immigrant who, while being audited by the tax authorities, sounds familiar, discovers that she must connect with different versions of herself in different parallel universes to prevent a powerful being from destroying the world. My money was on Banshees of Inisherin, but never mind. Now, according to today's reading from one of the letters of St. Peter, the Christian experience is a bit like being transported into a parallel universe. Peter writes this: "By God's great mercy, he has given us a new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead." In other words, because of Jesus, it's like we are born again into a whole new world. Now, I think I may have asked this question before in an all-age service, but I'll ask it again. How many sides does a font have? I'm not sure about that one there, but certainly the one at the back. And many traditional fonts, if you count them, and if you don't believe me, count them after the service, have 8 sides. Why do fonts have 8 sides? Well, it's to do with the resurrection of Jesus. It's to do with that hope that Peter is talking about, based on the resurrection of Jesus. And of course, at our confirmation service next week, that's an opportunity for all of us to reconnect with our baptisms. The traditional understanding, you see, is that Jesus rose again from the dead, not on the first day of the week, but in fact on the 8th day of the week. In other words, because of Jesus' resurrection, it's as if the rules of the universe are rewritten, and a whole new dimension of time and space opens up for humanity. But before we explore this new dimension further, just a few words about our first reading from the book of Ecclesiastes, which must be one of the most depressing books of the Bible. The key word in Ecclesiastes is vanity. And it opens, vanity, vanity, all is vanity, as the teacher, the philosopher, looks upon life, looks upon human affairs. That's his conclusion. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity. And it reminds me of a fellow student of mine at St. John's College in Nottingham, who treated us to the book of Ecclesiastes every day for 1 week in morning prayer. His name was David, and he was a Brummie. And I've decided that actually the Birmingham accent is perfect for Ecclesiastes. You know, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. Sorry for any Brummies who might be listening in as well as here. But it's a relentlessly depressing book. And the words that Linda read is quite interesting, because they're often taken to be kind of words of wisdom. And of course, they've been turned into songs, haven't they? I think the Byrds did a version of those lines. There is a time for everything. But actually what the teacher's saying, as he's saying elsewhere in this book, is that life is just an endless cycle of birth and death, sowing and reaping, killing and healing, breaking down and building up. And it goes on and on and on, over and over and over again. If you've ever seen the advert for the Alpha course, which of course Bear Grylls now heads up, You'll know that the advert is just this kind of conveyor belt. This conveyor belt of hatch, match, and dispatch. And people just go round and round on this conveyor belt. And the point of it being, of course, what's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? Well, let the Alpha Course tell you. That's the idea of Ecclesiastes. Just this endless cycle of futility and vanity. But here's the good news. In Christ, says Peter, risen from the dead on the 8th day of the week, we break free from that endless cycle of vanity. By the way, we break free too from those endless cycles of addiction that can hold us back. We break free from those endless cycles of violence that we see going on in the world, particularly in the Holy Land again at the moment. And we enter a whole new dimension, which Peter calls a living hope. And he describes this as an inheritance which is imperishable, i.e. it cannot be destroyed. It's undefiled. There's no corruption in it at all. And it's unfading. Even with time, it does not fade. And this wonderful inheritance, this living hope, this new dimension into which we're called, is held in God's safekeeping forever. That's the promise. I'm not going to dwell on the rest of the reading because we'll be here all morning, but it's a beautiful passage, and you do well to look at it further. 1 Peter chapter 1. It's full of hope. It's full of love. It's full of joy above all. Joy and rejoicing really is the key note, which we've tried to reflect today in our hymns. And Peter also reminds his brothers and sisters of the sheer privilege of living in this new dimension of hope and love and joy. This is something, Peter says, that prophets of old and even angels can only guess about. And yet, this is something we do know about. This is something revealed to us and something that we are privileged to enter into through the crucified and the risen Christ. But there is one really important thing about this new dimension that I want to focus on for the rest of this sermon. And this is what we might call, in today's language, the sheer resilience that belonging to Christ's new dimension brings. Peter writes this, "In this you rejoice." There's that word rejoice. "Even if now for a little while you have had to suffer various trials, so that the genuineness of your faith, being more precious than gold, that though perishable is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed." So resilience in the face of trials because of this living hope. In the news this week, there's been a real focus again, hasn't there, on the war in Ukraine, as the West steps up its support for Ukraine with even more military equipment. And as the 24th of February approaches, it's easy to think of the war in Ukraine being nearly a year old. But of course, that's not the case. The war in Ukraine has been going on since 2014. 8 years of Russian encroachment on the territory of Ukraine. But in the last year, of course, it's gone off the scale in terms of violence and brutality. I don't know about you, but I've often asked myself this question: what gives the people of Ukraine such resilience? What gives them such hope in the face of such brutal adversity? Well, one factor certainly is their determination to hold on to democracy rather than return to dictatorship. They do not want to go back to those old ways under the sways of the Soviet Union. They do not want to return to those ways. and they're paying with their lives to cling on to that hope of democracy. This should give us huge pause for thought in the rest of the Western world. We should never take our democracy for granted. So that's one thing. Another thing is that, well, they're Slavs. Never take on the Slavs. You'll never win. Putin should know that. But also, I wonder about the faith of the Ukrainian people. I can't help thinking that their resilience lies in their faith. We've just had the census results, haven't we, here in the UK, which reveals that 48% of the population now identify as Christian. Well, in Ukraine, it's 87%. Whether Orthodox or Catholic or a handful of Protestant churches as well. 87% of that population identify as Christian. And the influence of Ukrainian Christianity is wide-ranging. Just go on YouTube, Google Ukrainian church music, and it's a feast for your ears, and it's a feast for your souls. Lots of stuff from the Kiev choir and elsewhere, and even in our liturgy, we have a piece of Ukrainian liturgy and a piece of Ukrainian music, the Kyries that we sing in Advent and Lent. So Christianity in Ukraine and the impact of that Christianity cannot be denied. And here are those words of Peter once again. In this you rejoice, even if now for a little while you have had to suffer various trials, so that the genuineness of your faith, being more precious than gold, that though perishable is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. The faith of the people of Ukraine, faith in the crucified and risen Christ, is certainly being tested by fire at the moment. And I don't know about you, but to me it's looking pretty genuine. That faith looks pretty genuine as it yields a really gutsy kind of hope and determination and resilience. And to a lesser extent, but still in very real ways, our faith is being tested also, as we continue to stand in ever closer solidarity with the people of Ukraine. And that solidarity is really biting at the moment, isn't it? It's the middle of winter, and we're all struggling to heat our homes, to heat our businesses, and yes, to heat our churches. We're all feeling that sacrifice more and more. The other day, I happened to mention to a colleague that I've got quite a lot of annual leave accruing, particularly from the Christie. This often happens in the NHS, by the way, when you get into kind of February, March. Lots of people go on the leave that they haven't taken, particularly this winter. And my colleague said, "Oh, that's nice. Are you going anywhere nice?" And I just looked at him as if to say, what planet are you on? I haven't got any money to go away anywhere. I don't know about other people, but no, it's going to be a staycation. It's probably going to be a staycation all year. It's going to be a staycation as long as this war lasts, as far as we're concerned. And I'm sure that's true for many people. I mean, at least we can pay our bills. Many people can't even do that. So things might feel challenging. Things might feel pretty tough for us as well. And we might be tempted, because we're in the middle of a pretty grim winter, we might be tempted to feel quite hopeless. But whenever I feel hopeless, whenever I'm tempted to feel sorry for myself, I just think about the people of Ukraine. I think about their suffering. I think about what they're going through. They're really suffering. And I think about their faith, which in turn points me back to this amazing hope of which we've been reminded today in the first letter of Peter. This is a living hope which makes a real difference in the real world. It's a living hope in the crucified and risen Christ. It's a hope which changes everything. It's a hope that means even that there are 8 days in the week. It's a hope that sets us free forever from an otherwise endless cycle of vanity and futility, and yes, even despair. Alleluia. Amen.